All right. And then our next one for the day is titled Mums with Dogs. Is this wrong? Major dog mum guilt. I can never win. OP says, okay, so I have 3 golden retrievers. Prior to having children, they were our whole world and so spoiled because we had time to spoil them. I also told myself that having kids wouldn't change the attention that I give them, but boy, was I wrong. Now we have number 2 due in a couple of weeks and I could really use some advice. We live in a very small old farmhouse, but live on a ton of land. When it's not too hot, I try to keep them out. I try to keep them outside to be dogs and roam. I can still see them, and we have trackers, but they act like it's the worst thing ever. With having a toddler, I've learned that keeping floors and surfaces clean are a chore in itself, and with dogs, it makes it so much harder with the constant shedding, dirt, and lately bugs follow them in. I found several dead ticks on the floor this spring. Anyways, when they are inside, I keep them locked in the laundry room with the air conditioning and their food and water. But I feel like they hate me. They want to be out in the living room with us, laying on the couch and rug, but I simply can't do it anymore. I love them to death, but my toddler and I eat on the couch quite a bit. And on the days I forget or simply don't have the energy to vacuum, their hair is everywhere. My son literally poops out dog hair. It's awful. Now, my main mum guilt question here is, should I lock them out of the living room permanently? They've damaged the furniture with their nails, heavily shed, and make the living room just gross. And with 2 kids soon, I know I won't have the time to vacuum every morning before I let them play in there. Is this wrong? I feel like I'm making them feel neglected. Now, I would never... Okay, so we have a dog. We were lucky in that we got our dog knowing full well that we were going to have a baby in the house soon. I was already pregnant by the time that we got our dog as a puppy. And so already from that mindset and with that perspective, we created pretty serious boundaries in terms of what we allow our dog to do inside the house or not. One of those things, for example, is he's not allowed on furniture, he's not allowed in beds, on beds, he's not allowed in some of the rooms of the house, and so on. So we keep him on a pretty tight leash when it comes to how much we let him get away with. Obviously, he's only 1 dog. We don't have 3 dogs. And I cannot imagine the experience for a dog, or for 3 of them, what that must be like when they've gone through their whole life, knowing a particular way of behaving and being okay with a particular way of being in the house, and then finding that suddenly changed. And especially something like locking them in the laundry room to try and keep their hair contained. Like, that just sounds evil to me. It truly does. It sounds completely inconsiderate. It sounds like you are not actually watching out for your dogs at all or trying to set them up to succeed. Now, I say this as someone who also completely understands how much effort it is to try and clean up after dogs, who also gets that, hey, you know, the amount of restriction that you need to put in place with a dog and with a child is quite a lot already. And we don't have 3 dogs, so I can't even imagine the hair. And our dog is also not that big of a shedder, so I can't even imagine the hair situation that you're dealing with, because we already have a lot of dog hair that we're not very happy about. All that said, it is your responsibility as a dog owner and as a mother to kind of figure it out, to find a way for your dogs to still get their needs met in terms of being around the family, because of course they're very, you know, they need to spend time with you, in terms of having some room to roam in the house, that they're not just locked inside one room, which is quite intense. And in terms of still enabling your kids and letting them play. And this thing with her son pooping out dog hair, that is disgusting. I could not imagine any outcome in which that would happen with my son, at the very least right now. So we'll see how it gets when he's a bit older. But this is, I would consider that to be a pretty serious problem if you aren't able to keep that under control. So, OP, I would probably say, if I were you, I would look for a different way of dealing with the situation. And if I could not find a solution of any kind, then I would probably try to rehome the dogs, because I don't think that there's any alternative way to do it. I don't think it's fair or right to keep them locked into one room. And I understand like how much of a problem it is in general for you. And I completely understand why that is a problem. But you don't just have responsibility towards your kids, you also have responsibility towards the dogs that you own, because they did not ask for this life. They did not ask to be part of your household. You need to find a different way to deal with it. That's how I feel about this one. I'm also not the only person that says this. The first person says, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but I do feel like if you have inside dogs, they should be able to be inside dogs and live where you live. It's a pain and a half for sure. My dogs shed so much. It's part of our diet. My son lately has been throwing tantrums, and he's a thumb sucker, so he'll throw himself on the floor with his wet thumb, put his thumb back in his mouth, and then throw a fit that there's dog hair on his thumb and in his mouth. I honestly feel like it's part of having dogs. Either clean constantly or live with the dog hair like we do. And damage to furniture is also part of owning dogs. I don't think it would be fair to keep them separated permanently. Now, yeah, I kind of feel it's a little bit cruel to the kid. I think it's a little bit gross for the kid. I would really look for a solution that does not involve my child having to eat dog hair, because I don't think that's very nice. But yes, in terms of it is your responsibility to try and figure out some kind of solution that works a bit better for your dogs and for your kids. I think it's much easier to, for example, keep them out of the living room, but then let them move in the rest of the house. I think it's also okay to try and spend time with them inside different rooms, so that, you know, if you're spending 100% of your time as a family inside the living room, then it is a bit cruel to keep them out of there. But then it's okay to still say, hey, the living room is going to be the primary play area for our kids, so we're going to keep that area clean. And then every now and then we go hang out with the dogs. They have full roam of the house during the day, and our goal is to teach our kids and dogs how to cohabitate well. We have a robot vacuum that we run, and it keeps the floors clean and allows me to not have to vacuum manually. I think it ultimately comes down to quality of life. You want your family and child to live in a safe, comfortable, loving environment. I would also say the same is true for dogs. If the quality of their life has significantly decreased due to living in a laundry room all day, it might be worth it to reevaluate your setup or think about giving them up. Exactly. I think it's really, really simple advice. And of course, it, you know, almost goes without saying. So this person I just want to highlight. I have 2 German Shepherds who shed like no other. They sleep in our bed on all of our furniture because we chose to do that. And now we deal with the consequences, which means vacuuming every single day. Honestly, the idea of sleeping on the same bed as a dog kind of just grosses me out. I would never do that. And having a child also on the same bed that a dog sleeps in would not be cool for me. But you know what? Maybe our dog is just too active and gets in too much mud on too regular of a basis for me to really consider what that looks like. And then this final post that I'll read here, she says, I knew when I read your post that dog lovers all over the world would be jumping down your back. I'm here to say you're not a horrible person for feeling this way. I've heard from so many friends and family members how their views on owning animals in general changed when they became parents. I've never been a dog person because of PTSD from family members that clearly shouldn't have owned them. But I did own a cat, and even that seemed so hard when I became a mother. You spend lots of money on baby stuff, and then a cat comes and scratches it up. Now, I actually don't think that there were a ton of dog lovers that jumped down her throat here. I think it's one of those moments where you just really need the reality check of knowing, hey, okay, this is not fair for the dogs. You know it's not fair, or you wouldn't be sitting there and writing this thread, and you also wouldn't say, hey, it feels like they hate me. So on some level, you understand that it's not fair for the dogs to be locked in a room all day because you don't want to deal with their hair. That's that is something that you signed up for when you decided to have dogs in your house. So yes, fair enough that having dogs and kids is different. One of the things that really annoys me, honestly, about people with pets is the fact that they kind of treat them like kids. Anyone who ever uses the term fur baby, like these are my fur babies, my son's fur siblings. I'm a dog mom. I find all of these terms just a little bit strange. I would never try to pretend that my dog is similar to a child. He is a pet, and I really appreciate him, and I think he's a great pet, but that's what he is. So some boundaries are really important, and I think understanding that boundary for yourself before you choose to have kids is probably super helpful, because then when you choose to have kids, you're not so shocked by the fact that there's a difference in how you are inclined to treat your child versus your pet. That said, you still have a responsibility towards them, and you should try and make sure that they have the best possible life, whether that is with you or without you. But you cannot pretend that you don't have dogs in your house after you have children.